Hey folks, welcome back. Now, this is not really going to be a video about Shadow Empire necessarily. It's kind of going to be a video about how to get back into that campaign that you abandoned, okay, for whatever reason. There can be many reasons, right, when we are playing very, very long, complex games like this. And I'm going to throw games like Dominions in here, or, you know, like a big war game, like a John Tiller game, or War in the East, or perhaps it's, you know, maybe you're playing a big game of Civilization, some 4X game, you know, whatever it is. And you have to take a break for whatever reason. You know, you go on holiday, or you get sick for a couple of weeks. Or maybe, you know, like me, you ran away with the circus for 6 or 7 years. True story. So whatever it is, right? And you then come back, and for some reason, you want to play this again, right? Now, it would be very, very tempting to drop a big game like this if you've lost your connection with it. And this is something that I've been talking about quite a lot in terms of where your attention goes in gaming, okay? If you've got a connection with the game and you've been playing it for a long time and you've really taken your time over the game, your chances of wanting to pick that game back up and complete it are, I'd say they were exponentially larger, okay? That's my guess. It's a theory, and, you know, I'm not certain of that, but you know, I'd probably put money on it. So if your chances of picking a game up that you've put a lot of time and energy into increase, you know, with the more time you put into it, you might find that you are inclined to come back. Okay, the next problem that you are going to come across, by the way, I had a set of notes that I'd written, but my camera's battery has died, so unfortunately I can't show you the notes as I was writing it. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of coming up with a system, and we're going to work on this system just as we talk, right? This isn't something I've planned out in advance particularly, but it is indicative of kind of the way that I approach problem solving to some extent. But I thought it might be interesting for you guys just to kind of see how I think about these things, and maybe we can, you know, talk about it a little bit and come up, you know, you can analyze my system and see if you think it's a good system or not, and maybe we can work on it together, because I think this is a big problem, by the way. I think the attrition rate of large camp strategy games is very, very high, particularly in people who don't have a lot of time, and you need some real motivation to come back and finish a game that you started, okay? So in my case, the motivation to come back and finish this game is A, I was enjoying it, and B, I do it on YouTube, and a lot of people would have been really disappointed, I think, if I didn't complete it for whatever reason. So that's my motivation, but yours might be very, very different. But whatever the reason is, you have taken this big break. You've got to try to get your head back into that place that you were at. Now, let's say, like me, you've been playing this game, well, let's estimate, what, about 40, 50 hours? That's a lot of time of your life that you've put into this game, right? And the more that you think about this game, the bigger space in your brain it's going to take, and then the more attention is going to, more you're going to be thinking about it, right? If you then have a big break, something happens, like you get sick, so all your energy is devoted to healing, or you go on holiday, you know, and you're doing all these other exciting things, and then your brain starts to kind of move away from this big pool of energy, you know, that you've put into this game, right? So you've got a couple of hurdles, I think, and the first hurdle that you will get is, I don't want to play. Okay, that's the first thought. You're like, you know, for whatever reason, man, it's, you know, I just don't want to play it. And I think that there are a couple of ways of getting around this. One is what I've spoken about before, which is this increased time and energy that you put into the game as you're playing it. That will increase your reasoning. I think it will give you a solid foundation of reasoning to complete the game, because you've already put a lot of energy into it. I think the other reason would be, so for example, like me, I feel an obligation to complete it because of the YouTube thing. You might have your own reasons, but you've really just got to pick the game up, so turn it on. The next hurdle that I think that you are likely to come across with a big game like this, when you have had your mind disconnected from it for a while, is it's so big. You know that feeling when you're kind of facing this insurmountable mountain of effort, and it can be quite overwhelming. And particularly with a game like this. This is, by the way, this is a relatively normal size game of Shadow Empire. And as you know, this is a big, big, complex game, okay? Really, really big, complex game. However, this is a normal size game. You can get much bigger maps, like twice or 3 times or 4 times as big as this. And it can be very, very overwhelming to get back into. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the size of the game that is the problem. It can also be the relative complexity, okay? So a game like Dominions, let's say that you are playing Dominions, you're playing a single player game, and you're playing as Lanka in early age, right? And you've got a big blood economy, and you've got 8 AI opponents, and you're in like 6 wars. Okay, so those of you who know anything about Dominions will understand what I'm talking about. The amount of time and energy that you're going to be spending on each turn is going to be quite high. And I think that feeling of it's so big can really put a dampener on your desire to complete the game, okay? So that's like the second hurdle, I'd say. My proposed cure for this is to apply division, okay? And I mean that not in a mathematical sense necessarily, but let's say we're talking about Sun Tzu, and Sun Tzu said something like, organizing the many is very similar to organizing a few. It's a matter of division, and it's a matter of organization and hierarchy to some extent. So he was talking specifically about, kind of military hierarchy, although I would argue that everything that is written in those old Taoist texts is not to be taken literally. So you might have been talking about military stuff, but this is stuff that can apply to all kinds of things. If you got the kind of brain that can transplant systems and place them into situations where they perhaps weren't originally intended to be, that's a different conversation. However, in this case, I think we can use this. So when you've got a big game like this, you need to be like, right, okay, I've got to figure out how I can get my head back into that space, because you do not have the benefit of an immediate feeling that you've been playing this game for 50 hours or so, and yesterday you were playing it, and the day before you were playing it, and the day before that you were playing it, and the day before that you were playing it. You've actually taken like 3 weeks or maybe a year out of this game, and you've got to get your head back into that space. And the way that we do that, I propose, is that we break it down into smaller chunks, and we've got to figure out where we were at in our headspace. And it's going to be difficult to get yourself back into that exact same mindset that you were in, because there are many things that are attached to that state of mind, right? There's the emotional feeling of how, you were doing in the game at the time, like, oh no, look, I'm kind of, where's my supply? And that might have been something that was keeping you going, right? Oh wow, okay, I've got to fix this supply line. And that might, fixing these supply issues and building all these buildings and, thinking, oh wow, I can't attack for a while because I need to save ammunition. I've got to stop, I've got to stop oil being used, fuel being used. All of these things, they kind of create a compound effect on your emotional and cognitive investment into the game. And it's going to be very difficult to completely replace that. So I'd argue that that's going to be very difficult. But what you can do is do a kind of like bait and switch. Okay, so you're gonna look at the game map again, and you're going to look at the game state, and you're going to try to, in a relatively short space of time, and I'd propose for a big game like this, maybe 2 hours, you're going to go through the game and you're going to try to build up an artificial replacement. Think about Indiana Jones, right? When, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's trying to take the golden idol or whatever I can't remember what it is now. But he's taking this golden idol thing from a trap, and he's got the rock or the bag of sand or whatever it is, and he does the kind of slow switch over. That's the kind of mindset that you've got to be in, right? You've got to try to bring yourself back to that point of the game that you were in, mindset wise. It doesn't matter if it's the same, and you might set off the trap, because you might still get this feeling of it's still not there. I still don't know why I'm playing this. But I think that it's an energy thing, this is, and I think if you are able to trick to trick Montezuma's trap or whatever it was, right, into thinking that there's the same amount, tricking your brain into thinking there's the same amount of energy that's being put into this big, complex, scary project, you are going to be able to trick it, and you will be able to replace it. You'll be able to put the bag of sand there, and then the bag of sand magically over the next 2 or 3 hours will actually turn back into the golden idol, whatever it is, and you've got and then you can run away with your game. So that's what we're going to try and do. I hope that makes sense. So the way that I propose that we now break this game down is we've got to figure out why are we playing this, okay? Why are we playing this game? And by the way, if it wasn't implicit in all of the things that I've said, this is not just about Shadow Empire, okay? It's not just about gaming either. I think you can apply this to all sorts of things in life, and I hope you do. I hope it's useful. So you're going to break it down, and you're going to be right. Why are we playing this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I really wish I had my notes here, but I can't because my camera broke, and I don't want to use an on-screen thing because I find them awkward. So you're just going to I'm afraid you're just going to have to bear with me and listen. So we're going to talk about victory. I think victory is an important thing for a strategy game, okay? But adjacent to victory, almost as important, okay? Almost as important as winning is having fun. And I think for the sake of argument, and without making this too complex, fun and winning we're going to equate as roughly the same thing, okay? They're going to be roughly the same domain space that we're going to be playing within which to organize the rest of the way we're going to come across the game. All right, so the first thing we want to do is look at the victory. How are we doing? All right, and we can do that in a few ways. In Shadow Empire, we've got a tool. Here we go. So we're playing as the Minos tribe, and you'll see that we are currently 4th in the regime rank. Okay, so we've got an idea of how we're doing. Like, by this stage of the game, I'm usually won. I've pretty much won the game by round 152. So coming in 4th, and what appears to be quite a trailing 4th as well. 10% of the planet compared to the leader. You know, I'm basically doing a third as well in terms of populace, almost a third as well in terms of victory score. So it looks kind of bad, right? But we've got some vague memories of what we were doing in the last episode, pushing here north into Goldstone, making some very, very good inroads. We were pushing them back. I think in the last episode I took Gweg on here. So we had some victories. We got some memories, right, within which we can use to bolster this kind of replacement feeling of immersion and engagement. Okay, so we know that this kind of static number that we've got here, temporarily static because it's a turn-based game, but this static number is actually, it's not quite telling the full story, because Goldstone, we got them on the ropes as far as I'm concerned. They are in big trouble, and even though the numbers are the numbers are not looking good, we know that this is not telling the full story, and it's actually quite plausible that within 5 or 10, 15 turns I could completely defeat this nation. Okay, okay, so I'm kind of like moving into the next part of what I wanted to say, but by looking at victory, we get an idea of where we are at with the game. I think that's really, really important before we get any further. There's a couple of other things that we need to discuss when we're talking about a big strategy game as well. We've got a hell of a lot of counters, right? What do all these mean? Who the 8th Light Infantry Brigade? Yeah, what were they doing? Now, when you are reasonably well experienced with the game, you can see, right, okay, well, I can see that these guys are on the border, and they, you know, whenever a brigade or larger formation is on the border of something in Shadow Empire, generally it's either attacking, it's defending, or it's acting as some kind of deterrence. Okay, so you don't have to get too stressed out about kind of going through all these guys and checking out individually what they're doing. At a glance, you got a fairly good idea. Look, here we're starting to push up north, and you will remember that as well, right? We were pushing up north. We've got like what, 1, 2 brigades, 3 brigades, pretty much doing this northern thrust. All right. So, what's actually happening here? Well, we're kind of taking a look at the map, and we're looking at the forces that we've got on the map, and we're trying to remember where it was that they were headed, what it was that they were doing, what were their jobs. Okay, you can actually go into much greater detail. One of the things that I did in a previous Shadow Empire game when I had to have a big break from it was I would go through the order of every single one of these formations, and I'd go, okay, this is the 1st Modern Infantry Brigade. What are they doing? And then I'd look at every single subordinate unit, every single battalion that's attached, right? And I'd go through them, I'd check out, you know, their supply, all this kind of stuff. This is really, really immersive, but I would advise you don't do that initially, because this is going to run counter to this feeling that it's so big. Okay, so at the moment we want to be analysing the situation in kind of broad strokes. So we know that we are in a war with Goldstone. So let's take a look. Who are we at war with? Like, what are the other contenders in the game? So we've got Goldstone Federation that we've just discussed. We've got Topalia Pax. Now, if I remember right, we don't even know where those guys are. I think they're actually over here. No. Yeah, we can't even see them. I don't know where those guys are. I think... Yeah, they're here, look, sorry. So they're kind of not really that close to us. So we don't need to worry about those guys for the time being. We've also got Sansaria. Sansaria was this big, these guys on this side, I think, and these are the ones who invaded me. And yeah, I think we were at war, or we were at war. Yeah, we are at war. They invaded us. That's right. Okay, so we've got Goldstone, we've got Sansaria, we've got this group down here, Dunkelstadt, who if we remember, we ended up kind of just avoiding. We took Bondhausen, and then we're basically trying to keep them off our back because we don't want to get invaded again. All right, well now I'm starting to make some connections with the game where I was. Right, so by looking at my opponents, through looking at the there's victory conditions, we're looking at the strategic map, just kind of getting ourselves into the mind state of where the grand strategy element of the game is. All right, and as you can see, I'm starting to remember. All right, I'm starting to remember what was going on. Like I remember now that these guys they invaded me quite quickly, and I didn't really have much up there. So that was right. Now I started sending. I think I raised this brigade, the 9th Heavy Machine Gun Infantry Brigade. And I raised those in the last couple of turns, I think, and then I brought a more veteran brigade over, which is the 16th Modern Infantry Battalion. I think these guys, yeah, these guys are they're an older one. Okay, so there we go. All right, so now I'm starting to remember what's going on in this game, and that's a real big help. When we are dividing this big complex game into into something that's a little bit more organized, we need to think about the specific game or system that we're looking at. Okay, so in the way that Shadow Empire works, we've got this SHQ system, which is your command structure. Basically, this is your supreme headquarters, or the strategic headquarters. This is the center of your economy. Okay, now with the 4X game, it's going to be important not just to look at your military units. I mean, this is more of a war game thing, right? But in a 4X game, your economy is really important. Now in Shadow Empire specifically, the SHQ is going to be the center of your economy. If you've got more than one SHQ, then this is going to complicate things. But in most games of Shadow Empire, generally speaking, unless you're a nutcase like I am, and then you end up playing these games where you've got like 3 or 4 SHQs, which can be very fun. Generally speaking, you've just got one. So we're going to have a look at the SHQ and just kind of figure out what we got. Have we got any shortages of critical resources? Well, yes. Look, we're losing oil here, and we're losing food. Okay, we got industrial points. Looks like we got some to spare. Although, as you remember, a lot of these resources their turn-by-turn depletion will depend greatly on usage. Okay, so we can't tell too much from this actually, but it's a quick overview. The next thing we need to do in terms of a 4X game, particularly, will be to look at your resource production places. So your settlements essentially. Whether this is planets in a Space 4X game or your settlements on a Fantasy 4X or in Shadow Empire. It's your zones. We want to have a quick look through our zones and try and get an idea of what are they all doing? Where are the main zones? Which are the big ones with the big population centers? Because remembering, population is going to be a big driver of your economy. So we're going to take a look at Minos, for example. Neris was the other one. And that's about it. Because if you remember in this game, yeah, these are the two main zones and they are relatively low population zones for this part of the game. On most map settings, I would say, unless you're crazy and you play on outposts or something, and I don't recommend you do that as a beginner, by the way, especially now. This game is going to be really hard even without that. But yeah, you'll see that we've got low population. So these other bases, these other zones like Crank, Maulet, Ogalar Ruins and Exchange Shop, these were places that I created really just to kind of remove administrative strain. Okay. So you want to go through all your zones and just identify any issues with your economy. So that's going to be your next thing to do, all right? Take a look at all the population levels. Take a look at not all of the numbers, because you don't want to get too bogged down. But I'm hoping by now, if you've followed this system, okay, of looking at your game on a very low resolution level, right? So we start with the strategic map, and we look at the victory, conditions. And then you start teasing your memory a little bit with some of the stuff that's going on, right? I'm hoping by the time you get to this kind of mid-level resolution stuff, where you're looking at your zones and, the amount of population you got in there and the amount of funds that they're creating, and we start getting into the finer details, all of a sudden, we're about 50% of Indy's kind of juggling trick with Montezuma's trap, okay? we're about 50% of the way, and I don't think I need to hammer this point home this much longer. I don't want this to be a very long video. I'm hoping that you kind of get the idea of what I'm saying here without really going too fine into the fine details. The overall trick is to start broad and reintroduce yourself to the game in a very broad way, and try to make it fun by, or like pretend it's a game of organization. Yeah. So you are Sun Tzu, and you're dividing your forces into smaller and smaller things. And I know that analogy doesn't quite work, but you get the kind of idea, right? By breaking this big problem down into smaller issues and focusing on them in each way, not only do you stimulate your memory, but you also start to replace that emotional and, I would say, cognitive engagement that you had, with a new level of, with an equivalent kind of emotional attachment. If you are still, like, if you get this far into the game, into this process, I think if you get this far, so and I'll go a little bit further, so that the process is hammered in. All right. So what I would do next, after we figured out our zones, we know our fronts, we know who we're at war with, we've taken a quick look at the general idea of what our troops are doing. This is the point now where you want to start going, okay, let's go through all of our formations. Okay, so let's look at our infantry formations. What were the first doing? All right, okay, I remember. So these guys have been they'd been operating up in the north for quite a long time, right? And they were quite instrumental, I think, in holding the line as Goldstone came in, while we were waiting for troops to come in from Bondhausen. Yeah. And as you can see, we're kind of withdrawing these guys. All right, so that was the first. And you can go through all of the units that are, the subdivision units of the first. So these guys, you can take a look at their relative strength, their supply levels, their veterancy level, if they've got any of these regime feats attached, all this kind of stuff. And you can, again, you'll be like, right, oh, hang on a minute. So those guys were on the, they're on this low mountains, right? Why did I bring those up there? Oh, that was right. Okay, so I had this vague idea that I was going to try and split Goldstone, right? I was going to split it up this way, which is a wedge kind of thing, a wedging tactic I quite like to do in this game. Cutting an enemy's very, very large territory in two, right? And putting a wedge in it. And that cuts them off from the SHQ, and then they're kind of done, right? Because they've got to start coming up with ways of supplying their troops. They've either got to attack or they got to starve, all right? So that was what I was doing. I remember now, I was moving these guys up this way. So that's what these guys were part of this push. Okay, let's take a look at the second group. All right, and yeah, again, I'm not going to do this with everyone, guys. This is going to bore you to tears, but you understand. Yeah, I want you to see what I'm doing. Right, we now go to these guys. Okay, right. I brought these guys up as a retaliation, or as a response to this threat that came down from several brigades. 3 brigades is this? 1, 2. We've got 3. I think this is the same guys. This is Sansari as well. Yeah. So we got at least 3 brigades incoming. There's going to be more. And we knew that we only had a limited amount of troops. We only had a limited amount of credits. If I remember right, we are really, really desperate for credits. Well, that's another thing we can look at, right? You want to go... Look, Shadow Empire gives you lots of tools to look at stuff. So you can see here, look, we actually lost 1,500 credits. Okay, well, we got a credit problem then. So even though we've got all of these, this big order of battle we've got to go through, can we afford to keep them all? That's a good question, isn't it? Can we afford to keep them all? So was that something that I was thinking? It might have been. But does it matter? Not really, because that's what I'm thinking now. See what I mean? So, okay, right now, I'm kind of starting to get invested in the game. So I'm like, wow, how am I going to win this game? Right? Fighting 1, 2, and possibly 3 fronts. With a whole load of other stuff going on in the game as well. When I've got basically no income. How am I going to do that? I suppose we could go back and look through some of our zones, right? We could take a look at the zones and see which ones are producing, which ones aren't. Oh, that's right. I remember I made a decision to back off from Gwegon because Gwegon was not being very, very productive, right? So I abandoned that, if I remember right. And then Goldstone came in, And then by that time I'd finished the battle with these guys, and these came up. Oh, I'm starting to remember now. Yeah, because they then took Gwegon, which was completely freaking useless for them, just as it was completely freaking useless for me. And then, if I remember right, I bombed the hell out of it with an artillery brigade or regiment. That was right. I flattened it to the ground, didn't I? Look, there we are. Look, we can attest. Here's our evidence. I'm not just making this stuff up, guys. I can remember, and we got the evidence here. Look, so we bombed this place into the dust, and then we used this as an opportunity to rapidly move in. All right, okay. I think I'm about there now. I'm starting to get to the point where I remember this game pretty damn well. Alright, so this process is not magic, and I think a lot of you that are watching this are going to find this incredibly obvious. That's great. You've got a higher IQ than me probably, and I think it's important for people who do have this problem of dropping their games. You know, why would you want to keep going? Well, I forget if I said this at the start, but I think it's really important as a person, for your own self-discipline and for your own confidence, that you complete the things that you start, providing that, you know, time is on your side. You know, you got a little bit of time for gaming, right? You know, you clock off your job at the end of the day, or maybe you play a bit before you start. You got a bit of time between you know, rocking the baby, putting the baby to bed, whatever it is that you've got to do in your busy life, right? You got a bit of time for gaming, and I think it's good, particularly with a game like this, or any kind of strategy game where you've actually been putting in energy, because this ain't Candy Crush, okay? You've put energy into this game in order to try to I mean, the time investment that it takes to even learn Shadow Empire, that's not trivial, is it? Okay, and let's hope that as a, you know, even at the age of 40 or 50 or however old you are, because I know there's a lot of people who watch me who are in that kind of age bracket. I think even at our age, it's really, really important to still be developing. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, right? I think that if you're going to be spending your time playing with games, you want to be getting something else out of it, don't you? I mean, that's one of the things that I use to justify the amount of time that I play games, or I did play games, is that hopefully I'm getting smarter. Now, some people say that games don't make you smart. They actually make you dumb. They make you stupid. And I think it depends on the game that you play. And it also depends on your ability to extrapolate the lessons that you are learning from this very, very artificial, constrained set of, you know, circumstances and systems, right? If you're able to extrapolate those and learn things from it, right, and then take it out into other aspects of your life, that's worth something, isn't it? Maybe that's worth the 40 hours that you spent sat on your bottom, staring at a screen, getting square eyes. Yeah, you're not just playing Candy Crush. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not being mean about people who play Candy Crush. My missus plays that. So, you know, like if you like playing those kind of games, that's great. There's many, many reasons we play games. But I think that, to bring this back to my point, it's nice to be able to get something from these experiences that we have and to learn something about yourself, because you take away the game, or you take away the soccer ball, right? Or the baseball, or you take away the camera, you know, or you take away the juggling balls, or whatever it is, or, you know, the artist pen, whatever it is that your medium is, whatever you're doing. And at the end of the day, you're working on you. Yeah, you're playing with yourself and you're working on you. And that is a compelling reason to continue and complete the things that you start, because not only are you going to be getting better data from your experiment, let's say, if you complete what you've done, but you get a sense of satisfaction. And that sense of satisfaction, I would argue, I haven't got time now, but I can argue, is probably a core part of discipline. And I think discipline is a really, really important value to have. And if you can start the things that you finish, that's pretty powerful. So there might be times when you're like, this is not fun, I'm wasting my time. That's fine. Nobody's telling you, nobody should be shaming you that you are not, you know, wasting more time doing something you don't want to do. This is really, really kind of aimed at people who feel that they feel a big frustration, that they would like to finish the things that they start, but they're not quite sure how to do. Okay, so in kind of talking about this, I hope that I hope I've kind of made some really broad points about how to trick yourself back into being immersed in something. Okay, break things down into small, linked systems. Okay, just like the order of battle in a war game. Break it down into the loose strategy at the very start, and then you've got these other sort of subordinate systems, and then each of these subordinate systems has something more direct attached to them, and in turn they are connected to something even more direct. Just like this brigade is fulfilling a particular job. Well, what's it doing? Well, okay, there's a more abstract thing now. We've got the idea of a front. Okay. Oh well, that's pretty cool. What's the front there for? Why is that happening? Why are they invading? Well, is it because we've got resources that they want? Is it just because it's programmed to? You got to figure that out. But you can trick yourself. All right, guys, I'm not going to belabor the point. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that useful, by the way. I like thinking about stuff like this. It might, like I say, it might seem patently obvious to some people, and I would argue that if it's very obvious to you, do not make the assumption that it's obvious to other people. There's one thing that I learned in kind of in teaching when I was a juggling teacher is you are a fool if you assume that everybody knows all the stuff that you know. It's not going to hurt anybody, and I don't think any of my viewers should have their nose knocked out of joint by somebody stating what they see as the bleeding obvious, because I think that if you see that this is a good thing that can help people enjoy their games better and get more out of what they do, because if you come away from the experiences that you have during the day feeling good, and you are better set up to deal with the rest of your day, the important stuff, not the make-believe playing with toys, playing with games thing, but you can go and approach those other aspects of your life a little bit better equipped to deal with them and just generally feeling better. That's a good thing, right? I think that's a good thing. It makes me feel good anyway. Catch you later, guys. Take care.